Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
We are so honored to be affiliate partners for General Michael Flynn's movie, Flynn, Deliver the Truth, Whatever the Cost. Support General Flynn and the State of Freedom by shopping the Flynn movie store directly from the button on our homepage at freedomstate.us or through our affiliate link, flynnmovie.com/TSOF podcast. On that site, you can purchase the DVD, which comes with a streaming link. You can pick up Flynn movie merchandise and get his complete 5GW book series. Today, we have a great champion for economic freedom joining us. Mike Carter will be on the show for a conversation about transactional gold and silver. Before we talk to Mike, let me read the scripture of the day. It is Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, and it says, "Keep your thoughts continually fixed on all that is authentic and real, honorable and admirable, beautiful and respectful, pure and holy, merciful and kind. And fasten your thoughts on every glorious work of God, praising Him always." And this is a perfect instruction for how we keep our mindsets and our attitudes right during this time of uncertainty that's churning basically in every realm. We're facing economic uncertainty, political uncertainty at home and on the international stage. And the enemy just wants us to be fearful and distracted so we don't move forward, so we don't accomplish the work the Lord has called us to do. And this passage gives us the key to beat fear and distraction. It's exactly this, disciplining our minds and keeping our thoughts fixed on only things that are authentic, real, honorable, admirable, beautiful, respectful, pure, holy, merciful, and kind in every work that God does. And as we do that, and as we give the Lord praise continually, no room will be left for the enemy's tactics to derail us from the work God has called us to do. And this is basically the way to righteously ignore those things that would keep us from doing what we're called to do.
So true, Danielle. And you're so right. That is the ploy of Satan, the dark spirit, to derail us, to distract us from the work that we're trying to do. Because if we're distracted and confused, guess what? We're not making progress. So it is a daily focus and a daily effort to keep our eyes on the higher things and the ultimate objective, and really stay in touch with, I believe it was Augustine called the higher angels of our nature. And if we do that, then we will continue to make progress day by day. Well, as you said in the outset, Mike Carter, what a privilege to have him with us here today. He is the co-founder of the National Security Investment Consultant Institute, NSIC, among other things. He's also the co-host of Pirate Money Radio. Mike, I see the book right there to your left. So glad to see it right in front of me there. Welcome to our show today, sir. Thank you for joining us.
You bet. Well, I appreciate the way you open it up. Obviously, that verse has not been the theme song of necessarily either campaign right now, but being authentic and real and seeing what's authentic and real is more important than ever right now. And I appreciate as we look at going forward with real solutions, we're focused on that. And we got another one. I'll throw that in here. Proverbs 22:3 and 27:12. A prudent man sees danger ahead and prepares for it. The fool goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. And so as we talk today, I just want to share about being prepared, looking for what's real and authentic, and then some real solutions that Louisianans and others that are watching your show here can say, okay, this is something that we can get behind. It's one of the solutions that I believe is happening for such a time as this. So I'm just encouraged to be here to share what that's about and learn more about what all you guys have going on in Louisiana.
Well, thank you. We're so happy to have you.
Mike, you've got your hands full right now, involved in legislation or potential legislation in 25 states to allow citizens to basically transact in gold and silver. And I believe Louisiana is among the 25. Tell our listeners right at the start here, Mike, why is this issue so important, specifically in terms of preparing, as you quoted the Proverbs there, preparing for the future?
Yeah, well, there's a lot to get into today, but I'll just back up a little bit in terms of who we are. Maybe we have a show, Economic War Room, on Blaze TV. We have Pirate Money Radio, and really our thought leader, or one of our key thought leaders, is Kevin Freeman, our business partner. And we set up the War Room to help people get real and factual information on what's going on today. I mean, the Pentagon has their War Room; other countries have theirs, and we're not seeing a real media today speaking truth. And so it's important, and we set up the economic war room to look at what's the real challenges geopolitically, financially, spiritually, what all is going on in the world today, and then helping people prepare a game plan. And one of the things that came out of that has been transactional gold and silver. And this started as an idea back in, when Kevin was just a young child. He's quite a thought leader and very genius. But when he's about 11 years old, he saw us going off the gold standard, said, "This isn't right, and we need to have a better solution." And as we were looking at solutions that protect liberty, security, and values, one of our key focus areas here, the idea of transactional gold and silver and how we start to facilitate that becomes very important. He shared this back early on in Texas in 2013, 2014. We built a Texas bullion depository. We got it half right, but we haven't got the transactional part done yet. So we're working towards that. But why is this important to people today? There's lots of geopolitical threats. We kind of have the five undeniable truths that we run through in the economic war room here, and those are, first of all, our debt is unsustainable. Look at what's happening out there, and we can dive deeper into each one of these if we want to. I'll just do a top line right now, but we're 36 trillion, 100 trillion every 100 days now in debt. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to say, you know what, you can't keep spending like that forever. And we look at where we're headed, the interest alone, it sets up a serious situation for our country, and other countries are following on that same debt cliff. We have to get back to fair weights and measures. The other part is others are targeting our currency. So our adversaries are out there. They're targeting our currency. They want to de-dollarize America. And those are issues that when that happens, and if someday we do lose our reserve currency, that's going to change the way we live here if we can no longer print money like nonstop like we've been doing. We've got a wealth gap in America. There's a big gap between the rich and the poor, and that can't coexist either. We've got to look at how do we close that wealth gap, and the way that that's hitting us hardest is with inflation. Hardworking Americans are seeing every day their money is worth less and less, and that is an issue that can be addressed with fair weights and measures with transactional gold and silver. We have CBDC coming up, the central bank digital currencies. We can talk more about that in a little bit, but you're not going to be able to control how you spend your money as that starts to become a bigger and bigger influence out here. And we're just seeing that there's different ways to pay today. You got PayPal, you got Apple Pay. There's all kinds of new ways to pay for things now through modern technology. We can take gold, make it transactional, and give people another way to pay that will really deliver some key breakthrough.
Yeah, Mike, whenever you were talking, I was struck by, you have such experience in dealing with economic issues. You have this war room where you're laying the truth out for people and helping them understand it in very practical terms. If you were going to give some advice to our listeners, or not financial advice, if you were going to tell our listeners how you approach your personal finances at this time, where what you laid out, those five things are in very stark reality for us. How are you approaching your personal finances right now?
Well, there's no silver bullet to that, and I'd encourage people if they get a chance to sign up for Economic War Room. We make the show available free, which one show every week. It comes with an economic battle plan. We'll also give them Pirate Money Radio so they can be aware of what's going on geopolitically. You've got to really have a plan with a financial advisor, and we've got a whole other business that we work here, the National Security and Investment Consultant Institute, where we train those financial advisors to understand these threats, and then sit down with their clients and work through what is the right game plan for them. Is it going to be an inflationary environment? Is it going to be deflationary? Kevin's got a great book out called Game Plan: How to Protect Yourself from the Coming Cyber Economic Attack. That was done in 2014, 2015, but still very relevant today in terms of general things that you should be considering as you look at that. For myself, am I as prepared as I need to be financially? I don't know if you ever had that complete confidence. It's about staying out of debt. It's about looking for, when we start to look at the stock market and what potentially could happen there if there is some type of cyber attack, or if we see an adversary come after us in a big way with the grid and something else happens. Who knows how that's going to play out? But the market in general, I will say, is, for the last 40 years, we had a steady growing economy, and the debt wasn't as big as it is now. And you could kind of index and say, well, I'm just going to ride this out. I'm going to do great. Now, I think we're at a point where we got to be more selective as you look at savings or IRAs or retirements. It might be more about being a selector of the right stocks versus trying to just ride indexes out there. But again, that's for your listeners to get with the right financial advisor that has their interest at heart and can give them best advice. I'm doing the best I can with what I have and what God's given me, and I will say this: I'm not in need, and He's providing. And we know that no matter what happens, we don't put our trust in our IRAs or our 401ks. We put it in God, and He has the ultimate plan, and that true treasure is treasure in heaven.
Yeah, amen. Well, back to the idea of transactional gold and silver, Mike, and I appreciate you going into personal finance for a minute. And I think what you said is so right, that, there's not one size fits all that's going to be a solution for the whole audience. We just have to we can look at the data, we can talk to people who know what they're talking about, who are honest, and we can listen to the Lord and make the best decisions based on what we know. And that's kind of all we can really do right now. But in terms of transactional gold and silver, is there a first mover advantage for the state that gets this legislation across the finish line first? Because Chris and I were pushing so hard for this. We know Rep. Cruz brought it, and it was unsuccessful, unfortunately, but we really had a belief that if Louisiana could get this across the finish line, it would stand to be an economic benefit to the state.
Oh, I think there is first mover advantage. That might be one state, or it might be the states that get in early on as we move forward on this thing. But there's a significant transactional gold and silver opportunity, not only for the first state, but for any state that gets out there. Louisiana's been leading the way. Representative Cruz, Representative McCormick, Senator Abraham, you guys passed legislation this session, and your governor signed it. So in one of the ways, you are leading right now. You've approved gold and silver as legal tender, including bullion. That's an exciting place to be. And you've got a treasurer there that understands business. He understands government. He understands, he's not a typical government bureaucrat. He's an entrepreneur, smart guy, leader. And I think as he looks at, next steps along with the legislators there, I think Louisiana is positioned well to lead, and excited to see kind of what you guys do next with it. But imagine this: if you are one of the early entrants into this, the industry that can come around this, the gold industry, fair weights and measures. I mean, it's a significant opportunity for those early leader states. I live here in Texas. We've already got a bullion depository built. If Louisiana were to get something done, they could use that for now until they see the revenue opportunities that come out of that. But let's look at it just on the simplest terms. Not only are you providing fair weights and measures for the citizens of Louisiana and for others, because I think other states would say, gosh, if Louisiana's doing this, how do I get some money there so I can be transactional? There's some states that won't get this done. And they're going to be looking for other states to say, where do I put my money right now? And Louisiana might be creative. You guys are entrepreneurial there with many folks I've spoken to. And you might have a little bit different twist or program that says, if I'm in Illinois and Illinois is not going to pass this, I'm going to put it in Louisiana. But Louisiana can make revenue. There's a revenue opportunity for the state on this. So let's look at that as the lowest common denominator. Besides, the highest is you're going to give people economic liberty. You're going to give Louisianans a choice out there. But further down the scale, there's a revenue opportunity in that. Well, let's go back and talk about what we're talking about here, because I don't know if you guys have talked about this topic before or not, but essentially what we're talking about is taking part of what you make, putting it in a bullion depository. That could be a Brinks, it could be the Texas Bullion Depository or somewhere else, but somewhere where it's safe and secure, insured by Lloyd's in London, but a legal gold and silver tender, and being able to spend that with a debit card. And that debit card, I can spend anywhere I spend MasterCard right now. I have an app on my phone. I've got a debit card in my wallet here, and I can go. Last time I was there to testify at a committee hearing in Louisiana, I was going through a drive-through. And the gal working the window, I said, hey, maybe next time I come through, I'm here working on legislation in Louisiana. Next time I come through, I can pay for this in gold. And I explained it, and I actually got my drink there and took her. She goes, I love gold. I need to understand how to do this. This is an opportunity, whether you're an average hardworking American or rich, it appeals to everybody. You no longer have to be rich to buy gold because you can buy as little as 10 cents worth of gold on this app and spend that where you spend MasterCard. The difference is it keeps up with inflation. It's another way to pay, and it's fair weights and measures. And we see bipartisan support, Democrats and Republicans that get that, want to see this happen. On the backside of that, though, when I buy my drink or soda or sandwich, whatever that might be, right now there's a bank processing fee, and that's all covered by the merchants and retailers out there. If Louisiana were to implement something like this, there's going to be a revenue opportunity for that state to say, hey, we're going to get a percentage of that with every transaction that happens out there. And the retailer is going to pay it because it's already built into the banking fees. Rather than the banks getting it, why don't we? Well, I want the banks to get it. I want Louisiana banks to get it. But the processing companies, I want Louisiana to get their fair share. And that can drive revenue. That can be economic development and economic boom for your state. So that's on one level. The next is other countries come in and say, well, we like Louisiana's law, and you guys have a unique law system in Louisiana. I've not dug into deep into what that means, pros or cons, but there might be something unique there that says, hey, how does Louisiana take this to the next level based on some things that make our state unique out there?
Yeah, and what do you attribute the success that you're seeing or the traction you're seeing to, Mike? Is it, education is helping? I have to imagine inflation is its own very painful education.
Yeah. Everybody's feeling the weight of inflation right now. The government gives their numbers, but I look at what it costs to eat at fast food now, and inflation is not under control. And my fast food meals are running 40-50% higher. I was talking with Kevin Freeman the other day, who's not only recognized as one of the leaders in economic warfare, but a great economist, financial leader, worked for Sir John Templeton. And he was saying the only reason the inflation numbers are down right now is because used car prices have dropped. But you look at the average consumer spendables and things that are out there, they're going up and up and up. And what's driving that is we're printing more and more money, which is driving the dollar further down. And if you have fair weights and measures with gold and silver, this is a real solution for Louisianans, and one that, one of the things that Louisiana has that gives you competitive advantage is your population overall is relatively small. And if the Louisianans understand this and how simple it is and how it's right and how it's fair, there's an opportunity to create a ground game there that will reach out to all legislators in Louisiana and say, let's get this done. Let's lead on this thing. And you guys already are leading. Like I said, I'm excited to see what Louisiana is going to do next, but keep the pressure on. And there's a significant opportunity for folks with transactional gold and silver in Louisiana.
Mike, as you were talking, I was thinking about the legislation that Representative Cruz brought. I got to give a shout out to our treasurer, Fleming, who just did a wonderful job explaining it before the committee. But change is difficult, and change can be scary sometimes when you've been doing things a certain way for a long period of time. But it seems like this is a win for everybody involved, in it. There's do you plan to be actively involved this next session, possibly even testify here when and if we bring legislation again before the Louisiana legislature?
Absolutely. We're here. We're facilitating legislation. So I am platform agnostic. I don't care what platform you use. We are facilitating the legislation that allows for Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution for states to have their own legal tender as long as it's backed by gold and silver. And what started out as an idea, and Kevin did this book, which is an easy to read book. I really encourage your audience to get the book Pirate Money. It's a 3.5 hour read, but it's not an economic book. It's a book that's going to help them understand the history of money, the opportunity in Article 1, Section 10. There's a couple chapters you can read or skip over at 6 and 7 that gives the Supreme Court precedents, but then lays out how states can actually execute on this. And this started out literally 2 years ago in Texas. We almost got it passed in Texas 2 years ago. We will get it passed, I'm convinced, coming up in this 2025 legislative session, and has grown from an idea to a movement to where we've got other legislators from other states saying, hey, can you help us with this? And so we form kind of a citizen activist group where we're saying, all right, Let's get pirate money book in as many hands as possible out there. Let's develop tools to help people understand what the state constitutional rights are behind this. And then let's mobilize support, rally support with legislators and their constituents to make this a reality. And the power that we see happening behind this is, you start out the Bible verse, and this is bigger than an idea we've had here. This is something God is doing. We're helping to facilitate that, but that's what gives me great encouragement that there is a real solution to some of these threats we see on the horizon. Central bank digital currency, we can talk that in more detail, but if you lose control of how you can spend your money or where you can spend your money, we've lost all economic liberty. And I believe that transactional gold and silver is the solution to help offset that and the answer for America. And the amazing part is it's in the Constitution. It's there. And the other amazing part is we have the technology to make the gold transactional. I mean, I'm not going to walk around with a gold coin in my pocket and be able to spend that, but I can walk around with my phone or a debit card and spend that anywhere I spend MasterCard. I can buy a stick of gum with my gold now. I can pay a car payment with my gold. I can pay taxes with my gold. It's easy. It's seamless. It's all done at spot prices, and I can buy it cheaper than I can probably buy it anywhere else. I can buy bullion at 0.5% upcharge, have it in an account that's safe and stored. It's an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, and that's what I find within the context of liberty and economic freedom. That's what I find so attractive about this: the fact that it's a facilitator of freedom. It's a facilitator of economic independence, which is what we really need.
It's clear that in these uncertain economic times, we absolutely must protect our wealth from dollar and market volatility. Precious metals are a proven store of value, and many believe that gold and silver are poised to make historic gains in the months and years ahead. That's why I'm so proud to be part of a company that is helping more and more everyday people like you and me do just that. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, actual dealer cost. They are beating the prices of the big sites and have no credit card fees and no minimums. Shipping is free for orders over $500. You can also refer people to Metal Stacks for an additional income. If you are just interested in purchasing metals, you can visit metalstacks.com/dwalker, which would be great because I'll get the commission. And if you're interested in learning about the business aspect of Metal Stacks, email me directly at danielle@freedomstate.us.
Mike, how long, assuming we don't begin to convert to transactional gold and silver and really do this in a meaningful way, how long can we continue to sustain the current economic climate? At what point, if the spending continues the way it's going, if we continue to drive ourselves more and more into debt, how much longer can we sustain this before everything collapses?
Well, that's the big question that there's no absolute answer to. The question, as you ask that question, I think it comes down to, 36 trillion in debt, 100 trillion in debt every 100 days, or 1 trillion in debt every 100 days now, and you start looking at other liabilities we have in the government, 120, 130 trillion in debt. That is not sustainable. Other countries are doing the same thing, and so you almost have to back up and look and say, okay, what's the global market saying? And you look at the World Economic Forum, and they're saying things like there's going to be a great reset. You will own nothing and be happy. You will eat bugs and like it. That's not an agenda that I like. And so I want to be able to have an alternative with Louisiana, transactional gold and silver, or Texas, or Florida, or any of these states that are looking at it right now and say, no, I've got my own way of paying and doing things. I'm going to use my Louisiana gold card, and I'm going to buy that stake that I want to get out there. I can't tell you how long this can go. I can just tell you that the path we're headed towards is not sustainable, and it's not a matter of when, but if it happens. And so that's why preparation becomes so important. That's why a sense of urgency amongst your legislators and your treasurer, which I'm seeing you have in Louisiana, which is a great thing, to get this done so you have a parallel path to do things. Imagine this, if that great reset were to happen, and we don't approach anything from a spirit of fear, but of hope and of real solutions. But if that great reset were to happen, what does the World Economic Forum want? They want to see the implementation of central bank digital currencies. We already saw President Biden sign an executive order 14067 authorizing central bank digital currencies and how those are going to work out there. So this is a path that people are going towards. But when that happens, you don't own your money. The country owns that money. You will have a license to use your money, and they'll be able to tell you how you can spend it and how you can use it and who you can give that to. And so if we don't have another system, if we don't have another way to pay, we've lost that economic liberty completely that you were talking about earlier. And that's why this becomes so critical. But the fact that it's there in the Constitution, the fact that the technology is there, the fact that we're seeing the movement in all these states to say, hey, we've got to make this happen is what gives me great encouragement. So I think, keep the faith that great things are happening. There are real solutions. There are real threats. We talked a little bit about other nations targeting our money. In October of this year, the BRIC nations are getting together in Russia to discuss, what they are going to do. And then does that mean they're going to de-dollarize America now? They're going to agree on a digital gold-backed yuan, or they're going to work with the Bank of International Settlements to come up with another platform where they can trade, even if they can't agree on one source. When that trigger happens, and we don't know when it's going to happen, all of a sudden we become not the reserve currency of the world, but one of maybe several. And that creates a whole set of economic opportunities or threats ahead. I'll say threats, but we have an opportunity with transactional gold and silver to ward part of that off. And that's what we're talking about here. And I think that's why this message is resonating so well across the country and with both Republicans and Democrats that understand it.
I think so too. And I want to pick up on 2 points you made there. You talked about CBDC, and we had talked about that offline, and you made just such a brilliant point that I think brings this into more urgent terms. So people make the objection whenever you say CBDC is coming or could be coming, whether you like it or not. And people would say to you, well, in Louisiana, we passed laws that say CBDC are not welcome here. And you made the brilliant point, Mike, that if the deep state, these may not be your exact words, but if the deep state were to follow the laws, we would not be in the state we're in right now as a country. So the government has no respect. The federal government has no respect right now for the rule of law, period. So what's to make it think that they're not going to just shove this down our throats anyway?
Well, we have a state right now, which we need to implement. States need to understand they need to take this control back. The founders gave it to us. It's in Article 1, Section 10. But I think the normalcy bias that we get is legislators, both on the federal level as well as at a local level, think, well, we passed laws that will ban the use of CBDC in our state, so we don't need to worry about that. We saw a Republican Congress do the same thing. Okay, we checked that box off. That gives me the political goodwill for another year or whatever. But is it a real solution? No. We can go back to the days of the Carter administration and gas shortages and all that kind of stuff when there was a federal mandate that highways, all national highways would be, federal highways would be 55-mile-per-hour speed limit. And you had the same type of legislative will. It's like, we're not going to do that. This is our state. We're going to keep the speed limit where we want it and so forth. But what happened? The government came back and said, that's fine. You can do whatever you want, but you're not going to get federal highway transportation funds unless you do it our way. And slowly, there was a few holdouts, but eventually every state had that 55-mile-per-hour speed limit. You can pass legislation. It might make you feel good, but there's going to be a federal power within this that says, well, if you don't do this, you're not going to get that. What we're proposing is simply another way to pay. We want to see a strong dollar. We want to see Americans have an alternative, though, with fair weights and measures that allows people to pay with gold and silver if they want to, or to hold on to that as a savings vehicle. And we believe it will actually, when we get this done in multiple states out there, this will be a safety valve for the dollar, and that there won't be panic if things go on and an adversary hits us here or there. It's like, well, I've got some money in gold and silver over here. That's great. I've got money in dollars here. I can pay here. There is a tremendous opportunity for the banks and even the local banks. They should be the ones excited about this because this sets up local banks to take advantage of opportunities with gold and silver. And it also, we heard from one banker who said, if CBDC comes across the finish line, I'm not going to be around. That's going to be the 6 big banks. Local banks are going to be here. We don't understand the importance of local banks out there. This gives the banks, and he was a CEO. I won't say this guy. This CEO said, I want to include an app in my account so that if things get a little bit scary, when Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, he saw a lot of people exit and run to the big banks. Those will never come back to his business But he said if I would have had something where they weren't quite sure what was going on, they can move within my app into some gold and silver, still keep paying things in dollars and doing that kind of stuff. And then once things settle down, move back. I've kept them in my franchise. I've kept them in my bank. These are the opportunities that the banks need to understand and how they can use this for competitive advantage to really differentiate themselves and create another revenue opportunity. They're not going to have to hire any new employees. It's going to be simple to execute. It's a huge opportunity for the banks. And I have a soft spot in my heart for those local bankers. I'm an entrepreneur. I've had several businesses, and I've sat at the table of several banks where they've said, okay, they say we don't make loans based on people anymore, but how much do you want or how much do you need? And if I would have not have had that as I went through that, my business would have probably been in trouble. But that's what kept me going, and that went on to be a very successful business. We need the local banks. We need local opportunities to drive a strong local economy. And that's why I think this is so critical for Louisiana. I mean, we want to see transactional gold and silver in Louisiana. We want to see Louisiana thrive. I think this is a new industry it's an old industry reinvented that creates real opportunity for Louisiana. And all we need is the people of Louisiana to continue to say, I want this. Talk to their legislators, talk to your treasurer and say, hey, let's keep pushing. Let's get this thing done.
Yeah. And it sounds like to me, Mike, you're saying that there's two main reasons to do this. One is for your own, to hedge against any potential failure or crash of the dollar. And then the other one, or maybe a bank, right? Crash within the bank. And then the other one is really that it's an off-grid solution should CBDC be coming down the pike. It's a different way for us to protect ourselves and still be able to transact would the government not be able to trace our purchasing that way?
Yes. And again, that depends how your legislators want to work some of those laws in there. But that's where each state will have an opportunity to say, how do we do this? We're encouraging them to keep their privacy rights in there. We also understand that as we look at this, if there was an attack on the grid or something like that, what would you do? You could still write checks on something like this as this goes forward. The technology might not be quite it's like bringing old technologies back again. That tech might not be there right today, but it would be an easy execution of that. This is, again, a parallel path that is going to, I think, just give people another way to pay out there. And that's the easiest answer to this thing. And with inflation and the way people are feeling that right now, when they understand what gold has done and how it keeps up with the market versus others, that's a huge opportunity. I'll add one more thing. We had a whistleblower on Economic War Room several weeks back. Actually, my producer just told me it comes out next week. We taped it. We taped it a couple weeks ago, but next week coming out. And he was in Central America, and he saw the effects of hyperinflation out there. We just saw Venezuela, 120% inflation. If you got 120% inflation and you're buying groceries and you're working hard week to week for your paycheck, that's a problem. And he would share about how, he was worked in the factory. He'd watch, his dad ran the factory, and when he was a boy there, he'd watch as the workers would get their paychecks. They'd run and jump in the cars with their wife. They'd run straight to the bank, cash that, and then they'd run straight to the grocery store because everything was on sale that day. Well, let's say there is some type of attack on the dollar, or there's some hyperinflation activity that kicks in out there. Wouldn't it be nice to have some ready money set aside in gold and silver? I'm not saying you put everything in there, but you have some of your ready money there in case something like that happens. And then if inflation runs rampant, it doesn't matter. I've got my gold and silver, which is typically a steady store of value. And if I'm paying for it in dollars, which are plummeting, it's costing me a lot more every day as I can afford to eat. If I got it in gold, I can relax. I'm going in, I'm going to pay basically the same today as I paid yesterday. That's a real solution that we want all Americans to have.
Yeah, you were talking about the BRICS as well earlier, and the fact that they may be moving to a gold-backed currency away from the petrodollar. We've looked at El Salvador as making big moves with economic freedom, instituting Bitcoin as legal tender. I think about Argentina. I had friends in my former job who lived in Argentina during hyperinflation just last year, 2 years ago, and they saw 100% increase in all their expenses. I mean, people were just bleeding out, basically. It's totally unsustainable. You've touched on this, but is there any hope that we could expect this kind of legislation in a national way? I mean, it seems pretty far-fetched at this point to hope that, our country, certainly under current leadership, it doesn't seem that likely, would be looking at these countries and saying, well, let's get on the offensive. Let's do something to protect ourselves.
I think the question, would we do something on a federal basis to solve this?
Yeah.
I think that, unfortunately, I think that ship has left. We
It
cannot
seems
afford to go
like.
back to fair weights and measures with the debt we have right now. The federal government could not afford to buy gold and silver to back up all their debt right now. But states have an opportunity, and it's in the Constitution to do for such a time as this. That article, now states need to take that power back. And what's going to happen? And we're already seeing this. Treasurer Fleming has been talking to other treasurers. We're seeing, treasurers talking about, well, if we get this done in our state, we can work together to form kind of a compact of states where, I have a toll tag right now in my car, and I can drive from Texas to Florida, and if I go through different states, the toll tags talk and exchange with each other. That's the state-based solution. And too often, and unfortunately, too many of our states have said, okay, federal power has supremacy over everything we do. We're going to just concede to that. That's not what our founders wanted. States need to understand the rights that they have as a state. They need to take that back. They need to execute on what we call the pirate money clause in Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution and say, okay, we're going to make this happen. And like I said, I've met with Treasurer Fleming several times now, as well as Representative Cruz and McCormick and Senator Abraham. You've got legislators that have moved this forward, and it's on the line. Louisiana, there's pieces in place right now I think they can move forward on that would give you guys real competitive advantage. If there's other things that need to finalize and build into future legislation on privacy or things like that, those are all options they can look at. But it's important that the states move now, and I believe that Louisiana can make it happen.
Yeah. Mike, we talked a little bit earlier about change, people being resistant to change just because change can be scary. You've been doing things a long time a certain way. But apart from that, the natural psychological resistance to changing the way of doing things, what are you finding is the biggest sort of resistance that you're getting legislatively? Like if someone were to make an argument against what we're proposing here, what is the nature of that resistance and what are the arguments that they're making?
I think the resistance has been minimal, and those that understand it, I've talked to Republicans who think, well, the Democrats would never be in favor of this, and Democrats think Republicans are pushing this economic justice thing, because that's really what we're talking about here. The fact that it's bipartisan makes this such a unique opportunity, because I think it might be the only piece of legislation nationally that's got such strong potential bipartisan support as people understand it. There's a normalcy bias, though, that people don't understand. They don't understand that we as a country, our founders hated fiat currency. They did not want it. And we've not been on a fiat currency, a paper money currency, until the 1900s with the Federal Reserve. And people assume it's always been that way, but it hasn't. It's always been about real fair weights and measures. And that's where we see this opportunity with transactional gold and silver. There's been a lack of understanding among some banks thinking, oh, well, I'm going to have to deal with accepting gold coins or doing this at retail, or even legislators, until they completely understand it. We're not asking the retailers to do anything different. If they can accept payment with a debit card now, they can accept payment in gold, and there's real advantages to them, including potentially fewer lesser processing fees out there. So it's about being able to educate the retailer, being able to educate the banks, being to make sure the citizens understand it. But you realize how easy it is, and I have an app on my phone right now that in less than 20 milliseconds, if I go to spend my money, it'll look in the vault. My money's in Switzerland right now. I want it here in Texas, but it'll look in Switzerland. It'll say, does he have the gold to pay for this transaction? It will convert that gold to dollars and pay that retailer in dollars in less than 20 milliseconds, selling it at spot price. So it is amazing technology that's got proof of concept right now. Those that are curious about it, there's an app called Glint Pay. That I'm using on my phone. Like I said, there might be other apps out there that work like this as other states bring this on, but that's kind of our proof of concept we're looking at right now. And again, we don't endorse any one platform. We're here to facilitate legislation, and that's what we really care. We don't take gold sponsors on here. We're not selling gold. We're not selling silver. We're facilitating legislation across the country and helping to educate the public so they can walk in aware and saying, all right, we have this. The states have this right. We have a real solution. Now we need to figure out how we can best execute it for our state.
Yeah. And, President Trump has a real penchant for gold, which is well known. I know you said this is bipartisan in nature, but do you have any idea if he has expressed support for this or knows that transactional gold is even an option?
I'm not certain about that. I know President Trump has read some of Kevin's books, and we certainly have people within his network that are very aware of this. Dr. Ben Carson actually endorsed the book, and there's others that we know on his panel that would have interest in this. But again, I don't want to defer to federal rights. No, he's talking about Bitcoin, which Bitcoin might be a great solution. And I wish I would have bought Bitcoin years ago. Don't ask me for financial advice. I missed that opportunity completely. But the key though is when I look at the Constitution and what we're focused on with laser focus. Don't add Bitcoin into the legislation because it's not in the Constitution. That might be a thing that comes down the path. That might be another way to pay, which would be supportive. There might be some pros and cons to that versus why gold and silver. I think gold and silver is still best because it's more of it's more of a natural fair weights and measure and value out there. But it's only silver and gold are our constitutional right to move forward, and so that's what we're focused on, and we're focused on doing it at the state level.
So we have a legislative session, Mike, starting here in a few months. What would you tell our listeners and Louisiana citizens more broadly about what they can do specifically to help push this along and move this in the right direction and get a good result here?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would celebrate success. Louisiana is one of, I think, maybe 7 or 8 states that have recognized gold and silver as legal tender. That's huge. And you called out bullion in the bill that I think Senator Abrams put out there. So you've already got the tools to move forward. Do they need extra tools or extra legislation to do more with it? They might do that. But I would be looking as aggressively as possible. How does Louisiana lead with what we have right now? And then how do we build on that to add maybe some extra things if we want to do that down the road? But the key is I would encourage everybody to get educated. Get this book, go to piratemoneybook.com. And get educated on it. We've seen success where people just start sending these books to their legislators. That's kind of how it started. Other legislators calling and saying, "Hey, how do we get this? I'm getting this from my constituents. What's this about?" Start sending that to your legislator. Find out who your rep is and your state senator. Start sending the books. Send books to your treasurer. Say, "Hey, we want this done." Let them know that this is something constituents want. As people understand and learn about it, they're like, "I can't believe this is here. How do we get this now?" And I've got so many people calling me right now saying, "How do we get this now? Help us do this." That's it's exciting, and that we're seeing this grassroots kind of movement happening out there. But now, if it is to be, it's the old saying, if it is to be, it's up to me. I'm going to ask that Louisianans get the book, send a book to the legislator, call their legislators, call the treasurer, say, "We want this now." And I think you guys are in a great position to really take a leadership role in this thing. And I have great respect for your treasurer and his out-of-the-box thinking from a business perspective. I was in a meeting with him where he brought the banks in. I said, "Listen, we're using the big national banks for a lot of our state budget. Which of you banks can get set up? I want everything local. I want the local Louisiana banks to win on this." That's the kind of leadership that we want there. And Treasurer Fleming, I think, is wise in that. And this is one more thing that he can build upon within the Treasury Department there. I mean, Louisiana is uniquely positioned in that the treasurer has to be, and this is probably good for all government, but your Treasury Department has to fund their own budget. So they're looking for revenue opportunities to do that and to do things that can be good for the state. And so I think he's well positioned to continue to lead and move this thing forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Dr. Fleming is such a blessing to this state, and I think we'll continue to reap the benefits of him being in that position. So he's definitely someone we need to be encouraging and thanking and praying for as we move forward. Well, Mike, where can people remind us where people can follow your work? How can people find out if you're working in their state? And if you're not working in their state, how can they get in touch with you to say, "Hey, we want to bring this to our home"?
Yeah. We've got 3 websites I want everybody to look at. One is economicwarroom.com. sign up for our weekly shows. I think we've done 15 just on this topic, which I think they'll find fascinating. We get a battle plan with each one of those. We'll also get them on for Pirate Money Radio. We do one show a week. We're on American Family Radio Network, a nationally syndicated radio across the country, talking about pirate money and educating what's going on geopolitically, how this potentially fits into that. And then go to transactionalgold.com. That's a site that will show which states are having discussions or moving it forward right now. And that will kind of keep them up to speed on, is their state moving this? If you see it there, don't assume it's a done deal. That just says, all right, I've already got legislators moving this forward. How do I make sure my legislator knows about it and make sure that this thing happens? So transactionalgold.com, piratemoneyradio.com, economicwarroom.com, or I'll add one more, piratemoneybook.com, piratemoneybook.com. And that's an easy one. If you don't want to go through Amazon, you can order the book there and we'll send it directly out.
So very important that we move this forward in the next session. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. And hopefully we'll get a chance to meet you down here, maybe in April at the beginning of the legislative session. We look forward to it.
I hope to be down there even before then, as we start, rallying support with all your legislators and your treasurer there. And Louisiana, we are cheering you on. You have some great thought leaders there, and I believe that you can lead with this. So thank you for helping to get the word out and mobilizing the support across Louisiana.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Well, you have to let us know when you're coming.
Will do. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Be sure and check out the show notes for this episode. You can always go there and find the calls to action and resources mentioned in the show, and you can find out more information about our advertisers there as well. If you want to learn more about us or support our work, visit freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit LACAG.org. We'll see you next time. God bless.